He found an alien girl in his trap. She feared him, but he fought a war to protect her. The first thing he heard was the sound of something alive struggling in the wire. Not animal, not beast, too heavy, too desperate. Ryan Holt froze on the ridge, breath misting against the fractured sky above him. Stormlight flickered through broken clouds, casting bruised shades of violet and green across the valley floor. His traps were laid across the outer perimeter, simple snare lines rigged from scavenged cable and colony fencing. They were meant for ferals, not people. Certainly not whatever was fighting them now. He shifted his rifle from shoulder to hands. The weapon hummed faintly, old plasma coil whining with age. Every sense told him to wait, watch. Let the trap do its work, but instinct pulled him forward. Quiet steps down the slope. Breath held. The brush parted beneath his boot, and that's when he saw her. Not human, not beast either. Something between myth and nightmare. A woman-shaped figure tangled in his wire, her ankle bound in steel mesh, her body twisted painfully against the dirt. Luminous skin shimmered faintly in the stormlight, as if tiny fragments of starlight were embedded beneath her flesh. Her eyes burned pale silver, slitted like an animal's, wide with terror. Dark hair, long and tangled, framed a face both sharp and fragile, streaked with dirt and blood. And she was afraid of him. Her arms lashed against the cables, cutting faint trails of light across her skin as the wires dug deeper. The snare had torn into the edge of her calf, blood dark and strangely iridescent, seeped into the mud. She reached for a jagged rock, raised it in trembling hands, and hissed words he didn't understand. Her voice was raw, more breath than sound, yet carried a weight that tightened the air between them. Ryan lowered the rifle. Not because she wasn't dangerous. Everything about her screamed danger, but because of her eyes. Fear, not fury. She thought he would kill her. He crouched low, keeping his hands open, palms forward. Easy, he said, voice low and steady, though it sounded useless against her alien tongue. I'm not going to hurt you. She didn't believe him. Of course she didn't. She braced the rock higher, teeth bared, jaw locked. Ryan drew the combat knife from his belt. Her eyes flared, breath hitching sharp. He ignored the rock, bent low and drove the blade down, not at her, but into the snare. A clean strike. The cable snapped free with a metallic cry. Her body collapsed instantly, muscles too weak to hold. The rock slipped from her fingers, landing in the dirt with a dull thud. She tried to drag herself back, scrambling with bare hands, but the injured leg gave out. She fell hard onto her side, gasping in short, shallow bursts. Ryan hesitated. Every survival instinct screamed, "Walk away!" This wasn't his fight. He had no food to spare, no medicine worth giving, no reason to carry another soul in this dead place. She wasn't his problem. She was a liability. But he didn't move. Her ankle was shredded, wound bleeding fast. The cold alone would kill her before nightfall. And he had seen enough corpses, too many battlefields, too many colonies burned hollow, to know he couldn't stomach one more if he could stop it. He slid the knife back into its sheath. "Stay still," he muttered, though he knew she couldn't understand. He slipped an arm beneath her back, another under her knees, and lifted. The sound she made was broken, half gasp, half cry, but her fist still struck weakly against his chest. She had strength, even starved, even wounded. Strong hips, wiry muscle in her arms. But exhaustion won quick. Her hands slackened, her head pressed against his coat. She wasn't unconscious, but she wasn't fighting anymore either. Ryan adjusted her weight. He was strong, but his body bore its own scars. One knee stiff with old shrapnel, shoulder half fused from burns. Every step jarred pain down his leg. Her warmth pressed through his jacket in uneven patches, one side fever hot, the other ice cold. The cabin wasn't far, half an hour across broken ground, through twisted trees and the hollow bones of colony walls. Farther than he wanted with her weight, but he kept going. Her breathing slowed, shallow but steady. Once her fingers clutched his collar, not in struggle this time, but as if afraid he'd let go. When he pushed open the cabin door, the warmth struck hard. The small fire in the stove glowed low, scent of smoke heavy. He laid her gently on the old cot near the wall, adjusting the ragged blanket over her trembling body. I know, the torn fabric she wore wasn't human clothing. Something like woven hides, patterned with faint glowing seams that pulsed when the firelight touched them. Torn across the chest and thigh, bearing too much pale, scarred skin. She pulled the blanket higher instinctively, still watching him, with guarded, silver eyes. Ryan turned away, focusing on the bandages in the crate. Water, cloth, a handful of old antiseptic vials. He crouched beside her. "This will sting," he said softly, knowing his words were useless to her ears. When the cloth touched her wound, she gasped sharp and gripped the edge of the cot. But she didn't strike. She didn't scream. She endured. He wrapped the ankle in steady hands, checked her toes for color. Still warm, still alive. He poured a bowl of ration stew and set it near her. She stared at it like it might kill her. He didn't force, didn't explain, just sat back in the chair, staring into the fire. Minutes passed before she reached for the bowl. She ate slow, cautious, every bite measured. When the bowl was empty, she set it aside and lay back down, never taking her eyes off him. Ryan didn't ask who she was, didn't ask what she was. He wasn't ready, and clearly, neither was she. But she hadn't run. Not yet. That night, she didn't sleep. He heard her shifting on the cot as the fire dropped to embers. Her breaths changed rhythm, sharp gasps fading into shallow sighs. Sometimes she sat up, sometimes curled tight beneath the blanket. Once a low hum trembled in her throat, like the sound of mourning or prayer. Ryan lay still on the floor, one boot still on, rifle within reach. He never slept deep, but every time he opened his eyes, her silver gaze was already fixed on him. When dawn cracked through the shutter slats, she was awake. The pale light hit her face, and for the first time he saw her features without shadow. High cheeks, delicate jaw, faint glowing veins across her temples. She looked fragile, and yet something in her eyes said she had survived more than he could imagine. Ryan tossed wood into the stove, coaxing flames higher. He poured water into the kettle, cracked an egg over the skillet. The smell spread warm through the cabin. Her eyes flicked toward it once, then quickly away. "You understand me?" he asked suddenly, turning back. She froze, then after a pause gave the smallest nod. So she could. She had chosen not to before. Silence had been her weapon. "Why didn't you say anything?" Ryan muttered. She didn't answer, just pulled the blanket tighter over herself, silver eyes never leaving his face. He served the food, placed a plate near her, then backed away. She hesitated, then ate everything, pride still in her movement, even wounded, even hunted. When she finished, he crouched again by her ankle. She let him unwrap the bandage this time without pulling back. The wound was deep, but swelling less. Still dangerous, but manageable. As he worked, his gaze flicked once, only once, over the torn seam across her thigh, the bruises across her ribs. He forced himself back to her leg, hands steady. But she noticed. "You're not going to kill me?" The words came out halting, accented but clear. Human tongue, broken yet sharp. Ryan stilled. He looked up into her eyes. "No." Her stare lingered, hard and unyielding, then softer. "Why?" He didn't have an answer. Not one that would matter. Outside, the storm rumbled across the valley. The shattered sky glowed sickly green. Something distant roared. Metal, not beast. Ryan froze. Her eyes widened with recognition. "They're coming," she whispered, voice low, trembling with both fear and certainty. Ryan tightened the bandage on her leg and stood, rifle in hand, heart steady. He had no idea who they were. But for the first time in years, he wasn't alone. The storm broke by nightfall. Rain lashed against the metal roof, each drop ringing sharp as shrapnel. Ryan sat near the fire, rifle across his lap, eyes half on the flames and half on the girl curled beneath the blanket. She hadn't spoken again since that whisper at dawn. Only silence. Only the occasional tremor of her shoulders when thunder cracked. Her name, he realized, was the first thing he needed. Names mattered. Without one, she was only a shadow. "What do I call you?" he asked finally. For a long time she didn't answer. Then in a voice soft but clear, she said, "Serenia." The syllables slid like broken glass in starlight, heavy with weight he didn't understand. Ryan nodded once. Serenia. She watched him carefully, as if the way he shaped her name would decide her fate. Then, with the faintest exhale, her shoulders loosened. Fragments of truth. Over the next days, a rhythm grew. He hunted the ridges, brought in scraps of meat. She kept the fire alive, sometimes cleaning his tools with hands that trembled but never faltered. Her leg healed slowly. She no longer cried out when he changed the bandage. Instead, she studied him. His scars, his limp, the way he checked the rifle even in silence. One morning, as he poured water into the basin, she spoke again. "You fought." It wasn't a question. Ryan didn't look back. "Yeah." Her silver eyes traced the old burns across his arm. "Not here." "No, off-world, in the Halcyon campaign." At that, something flickered across her face. Recognition, pain. "You fought. My kind." Ryan turned. "Your kind?" Her throat worked. She pulled the blanket tighter over her shoulders. "They made us, for war, for you, for your species. We were born in glass, shaped by chemicals, bound to orders we did not choose." The words spilled sharp like knives she'd hidden too long. "They called us Vayari, to protect, to kill. But our blood carries something we never wanted, a signal. In your kind it breeds obsession, loyalty, a need to shield us. That is why they kept us near soldiers. That is why we were property." Ryan froze. Obsession, loyalty, protectiveness. He remembered rumors whispered in barracks, half dismissed as superstition, of soldiers throwing themselves into fire for alien women bred in labs. He had laughed them off. Now, sitting across from one, the laugh died cold. Serenia's gaze fixed on him. "You should have left me in the trap." "Maybe," Ryan admitted, "but I didn't." Her lips parted, breath unsteady. "Then you are already marked." Silent bonds. The knowledge sat heavy between them. Ryan didn't speak of it again, but every gesture carried new weight. When he passed her food, their fingers brushed and lingered. When he steadied her ankle, his hand tightened too long. Each time he forced distance, but her silver eyes caught every slip. One evening, as he repaired the stovepipe, she rose carefully, limping, and set a log on the fire without asking. "You shouldn't be walking," Ryan said. "You shouldn't be watching me like I'll break." The words struck harder than he expected. He looked away, jaw tight. "Where will you go when you heal?" he asked. Her silence answered before her words did. "There is nowhere." The warning. By the fourth night, the storm passed. Stars burned sharp against the shattered sky. Serenia sat near the open shutter, moonlight brushing her glowing skin. She looked almost unearthly, fragile yet untouchable. "They will find me," she whispered. Ryan leaned against the wall. "The hunters." She nodded. "They call themselves reclamators, not soldiers, not law, merchants of blood. They take what was lost and sell it back to the corporations who made us, dead or alive." Her voice faltered, then steadied. "And they will kill you for sheltering me." Ryan studied her face, the way she tried to speak like iron but trembled like glass. He thought of the trap, of her bleeding ankle, of the way her hand had clutched his collar. "Let them try," he said. Her head snapped toward him, silver eyes wide. "You do not understand. They will burn this ridge to ash. For me, Ryan met her stare without flinching. I've seen ash before. Doesn't scare me. Firelight confessions. Later that night, while embers cracked low, she asked the question she had been holding since the first day. Why did you save me? Ryan hesitated. The easy answer, duty, mercy, chance, felt hollow. I've seen too many bodies left in the dirt, he said finally. Didn't want another. She studied him. So it was pity. No, his voice sharpened. Pity dies fast. I'm still here. Her lips parted. For a heartbeat, the fire reflected in her eyes like liquid silver. Then she looked away, shoulders trembling, as if fighting something inside her. You don't know what I carry, she whispered. Then tell me. Serenya's voice cracked. I carry war. I carry the scream of every soldier who died because of me. I carry the chains of being wanted only as a weapon. And I carry the curse your people wrote into my blood. Anyone who protects me destroys themselves. Her hands clenched in the blanket. She shook her head, bitter. That is why you should have let me die. Ryan stepped closer, crouching so the firelight cut shadows across both their faces. Listen to me, he said quietly, but firmly. I don't care what they made you for. I don't care what's in your blood. You're not a weapon to me. You're just... He stopped. The word caught before it left. Her eyes searched his face. Just what? He didn't answer. Not with words. His silence was louder than speech. Shadows on the ridge. The next morning, the air carried a different weight. Still, heavy, waiting. Ryan checked the traps along the ridge. The forest was too quiet. No ferals, no wind, no birds, only silence. When he returned, Serenya was standing, wrapped in his old coat, one hand braced against the wall. She looked toward the horizon, her silver eyes narrow. They're close, she murmured. Ryan's hand tightened on the rifle. How do you know? I was made to feel them. Every Vayari is linked to the frequencies they use. When they draw near, it burns inside us. She touched her temple, wincing. Like fire under the skin. Ryan looked out at the broken valley. A shadow moved across the far ridge, too large for animal, too steady for storm. Hunters. The unspoken choice. That night, while the ridge slept uneasy, Serenya sat near the fire, eyes hollow. If they catch me, they will not kill me quickly, she said. They will drag me back, tear me apart until they learn why I resisted. I would rather die here. Ryan met her stare. Not happening. You cannot fight them all. I don't need to fight them all, just the ones that come. Her lips trembled, but her voice stayed sharp. Then you will die because of me. Ryan stepped closer, kneeling so the fire cast his face in harsh lines. Maybe, but I'll die on my own choice, not theirs, and not yours. For the first time, her silver eyes softened. Not with fear, not with defiance, but with something dangerously close to trust. Slowly, she lifted her hand, hesitated, then let her fingers brush his. A fleeting touch, electric. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. The ridge outside howled with the wind, but inside the cabin, a line had been drawn. Not with words, not with vows, but with the choice of two people who had both been made to believe they were property. And now, together, they would fight to prove they were not. The knock came just after dawn. Not gentle, not hesitant. 3 sharp strikes against wood that echoed through the cabin like gunfire. Ryan froze mid-step. Serenya stiffened, blanket slipping from her shoulders as her glowing eyes darted to the door. For a heartbeat, the cabin held no sound but the crackle of fire and the pounding of 2 hearts. Ryan reached for the rifle leaning against the wall. He didn't stand in front of the door, never in front. Just to the side, muzzle raised, breath steady. Who is it? He called. A pause, then a voice. Low, calm, almost polite. Name's Vane, Kaylor Vane, contract reclamator. Looking for something I hear you might have found? Serenya's face drained of color. Her fingers dug into the cot frame hard enough to whiten her knuckles. Ryan's jaw tightened. He cracked the door half an inch, enough to see. And the man outside wasn't like the dust-worn settlers of frontier colonies. He wore a long black coat that gleamed with rain, boots too polished for the mud. His belt carried 2 pistols, chrome bright, and a blade humming faint with plasma current. Behind him, a sleek transport hovered low, engines purring like predators at rest. "You're a long way from the trade routes," Ryan said flatly. Vane smiled. It didn't touch his eyes. "So are you. What do you want?" "A runaway. Female. About your height." His gaze slid past Ryan, sharp as glass, though with brighter features. "I believe she fell into your company. I'm here to collect her." Ryan didn't blink. "Nobody here fits that description." "Really?" Vane's smile thinned. "Funny, because her blood leaves a trace, subtle but detectable, and my scanners tell me I'm close." Behind Ryan, Serenia whispered, barely a sound. "He'll kill you." Ryan's grip tightened on the rifle. "No one here," he repeated, voice like iron. Vane studied him. A long moment of silence stretched, thick as wire pulled taut. Then he stepped back, tipped his hat faintly, and said, "If you're lying a hole, you're digging your own grave. I'll be back." He turned. Boots crunched over frost. The hum of his ship deepened, then faded into the clouds. Ryan shut the door and bolted it. The cabin felt smaller now, tighter. Serenya's breath came quick, shallow. "You should have given me up," she whispered. Rian slung the rifle over his shoulder. "Not happening." Her silver eyes burned. "You don't understand. He isn't alone. He never is." The ambush. She was right. By nightfall, the ridge wasn't quiet anymore. Drones whined faintly overhead, invisible except for glints of red against the storm-dark sky. Out past the tree line, shadows moved, too smooth, too coordinated for beasts. Ryan scanned through his scope from the cabin roof. 3 mercenaries in black armor, motion steady, flanking wide, a hunting net tightening around them. He climbed down, teeth clenched. "They're here." Serenya's hands shook as she braided her hair back, knife strapped against her thigh. The coat he'd given her hung loose, but her stance was steady. "They won't stop," she said. "Not until one of us is dead. Then we make sure it's them." Her silver eyes met his. Fear, yes, but also something harder now, something willing. The first shot cracked before midnight. A plasma round slammed into the cabin wall, shattering wood and spraying fire dust. Serenya dropped low instantly, instinct sharp. Ryan shoved her toward the back wall, grabbed the rifle, and fired through the shattered shutter. One merc went down, sparks exploding from his chest plate. The other 2 scattered behind trees, returned fire, slicing blue streaks across the cabin front. "Out the back!" Rian barked. Serenya didn't argue. She limped but fast, pulling the rear hatch open. Cold night air blasted in, sharp with ozone. They ran. Snow crunched under boots. Plasma fires seared through branches. Ryan's knee screamed with every stride, but adrenaline drowned the pain. Serenya stumbled once. He caught her, lifted her half across his shoulder, and kept moving. Behind them, mercenaries shouted coordinates, their helmets glowing with HUD light. Drones whirred overhead, scanning beams sweeping like blades of red light. "Where?" Rian hissed. Serenya pointed toward the jagged cliffs. "The ravine. They can't follow there with machines." The ravine. The ravine was a scar in the earth, a wound of rock and ice plunging into black depths. Winds howled upward, tearing at clothes and hair. Ryan slid down first, boots skidding on shale. He braced Serenya with one arm, guiding her descent. Stones clattered into darkness. At the bottom, shadows cloaked them. The mercenaries above cursed, their lights slicing across the cliff, but failing to track them. For a breath, silence. Then Serenia doubled over, clutching her head. Her body shook, veins glowing faint beneath her skin. "Serenia!" Rian crouched, gripping her shoulders. "They're inside me," she gasped. "Their signal. They burn it through my blood to find me." Rian's chest tightened. He had no tech to block signals, no shield, just instinct. "Look at me," he ordered. "Right here. Ignore them." Her silver eyes snapped to his. They were wild, blazing with pain. "You'll die for me," she choked. "Maybe," Rian said, voice steady as stone. "But not tonight." The fight in the dark. The mercenaries dropped into the ravine with grapples, armor grinding against stone. Blue lights flickered across their visors. One raised a rifle, beam humming. Ryan fired first. The blast lit the ravine like lightning, tearing through the man's chest. Sparks sprayed. He toppled backward, crashing into rocks below. The second charged with a blade. Ryan barely blocked with the rifle stock. Sparks flew, the air hot with plasma arcs. The merc's strength pressed him down, until Serenia struck. Her hand flared with light, a surge of raw energy bursting from her palm. It slammed into the mercenary's chest, hurling him against the wall. His armor cracked, systems sparking. He didn't rise. She collapsed immediately, panting, skin dimming. Ryan caught her before she fell. "What the hell was that?" Her voice was faint. "The curse, the weapon they built into us. I swore never to use it again." Ryan's arms tightened around her. "You just saved us." Her eyes fluttered closed. "Or doomed us. That blast, they'll track it." Above, thunder rolled. The sound of engines roared louder. Vane had returned. Vane's shadow. His voice echoed down the ravine, amplified through comms. "Impressive, Holt. Didn't think you still had fight in you. But you can't win this. She doesn't belong to you. She doesn't belong to herself. She's property, and property always returns to its owner." Ryan shifted Serenia against the wall, rifle raised toward the cliff edge. His heart hammered, but his voice stayed calm. "She's not property. She's with me." Vane's laugh slithered like oil. "Then you've chosen death, and death is something I'm happy to deliver." Engines roared overhead. The sky burned with searchlights. Serenia stirred weakly, whispering against Rian's chest. "You should leave me. Save yourself." "Not happening," Rian growled. Her trembling hand clutched his coat. "Why?" Rian looked up into the blinding lights, into the shadow of the man who had come to take her. His answer was simple. "Because I'd rather die fighting for you than live as someone who didn't." The sky split open as dropships descended. Firelight rained into the ravine. Mercenaries swarmed. The war had arrived, and Ryan Holt, broken soldier of a forgotten campaign, lifted his rifle and stood between them and the alien girl who had taught him what it meant to choose. The night burned like war. Engines thundered above the ravine, shaking loose stones that rained down like shrapnel. Ryan pressed his back against the jagged wall, Serenia trembling in his arms, her silver eyes half-lidded from exhaustion. The blast she had unleashed moments before still clung to the air, metallic and hot, like lightning trapped in the lungs. Searchlights swept the gorge, hunting shapes in the dark. Mercenaries dropped one by one on steel lines, their armor glinting faint blue as boots slammed against stone. Plasma rifles hummed as they charged, the air crackling with imminent fire. "Stay low," Rian muttered, setting Serenia against the wall. His voice was calm, but his pulse roared. His hands remembered too much: how to aim, how to fire, how to kill. He had sworn off war when the Halcyon campaign ended, but the war had never really left him. It waited inside, silent, until tonight. The first mercenary hit the floor of the ravine and turned toward them. Ryan fired before the man could lift his rifle. The blast struck clean, armor shattering, body thrown back against stone. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Serenia's fingers gripped his sleeve weakly. "More are coming." "I know." They poured into the gorge in disciplined lines, spreading across the rocks like predators closing in. Fire lit the shadows, blue arcs searing the air. Ryan ducked behind a jut of stone, return fire cracking from his rifle. Each shot landed with brutal precision. Center mass, throat, visor. Years of soldiering returned as if the years of silence in the ridge had never happened. But there were too many. For every one he dropped, two more replaced them. Their voices echoed through comms, clipped and cold, calling coordinates, driving the net tighter. Serenia pushed herself to her knees, her glowing veins brightening again, light rippling under her skin. Her hands trembled as she tried to summon the same force she had used before. "Don't!" Ryan snapped, grabbing her wrist. "You'll burn yourself out." Her gaze locked on him, wild. "You can't stop them without me. We'll find another way." "There is no other way." The air shook with another voice, deep and amplified. Kalor Vanes. His ship hovered just above the cliff, silhouette framed in the stormlight, cloak whipping in the engine wash. "You can't win this, Holt. You know that. Hand her over, and maybe they'll let you live long enough to limp home. Refuse, and you'll die in a hole no one will remember." Ryan leaned out, fired a burst toward the lights above. Sparks flared across the hull, harmless against shield plating. He knew it, but he fired anyway. "She's not yours," he shouted. Vane's laugh rolled down the ravine. "She isn't yours either. She isn't even hers. She's a product, a tool, a weapon, and weapons belong to the men who know how to use them." Serenia's breath caught, a sound that was half fury, half grief. She pushed against Rian's grip, forcing her way forward. Her body glowed brighter, light cracking across her skin like molten fissures. "Serenia, stop!" But it was too late. The energy burst outward, a wave of searing light that slammed into the descending mercenaries. Armor split, weapons shattered, bodies thrown against rock. The ravine blazed white for an instant, brighter than lightning. When it faded, half the mercs lay broken. The rest staggered back, shaken. Serenia collapsed to her knees, her breath shallow, skin dimmed to a faint shimmer. Ryan caught her before she fell fully, holding her against his chest. "You'll kill yourself doing that," he hissed. Her lips trembled. "Better me than you." "No," Ryan growled. "Not like this." The surviving mercenaries regrouped. Above, Vane descended slowly on a lift platform, boots striking the rock with calculated weight. He carried no rifle, only a gleaming plasma blade at his hip. His eyes found Serenia first, then Ryan. "You see," he said, his voice calm as if lecturing children. "Even she knows what she is, a weapon that kills everything around her. You don't protect her, Holt. You chain yourself to your own executioner." Ryan rose, placing Serenia carefully against the wall. His rifle hung in his hands, but his eyes never left Vane. "She's not a weapon," Ryan said, voice low, steady. "She's a person, and you'll never touch her again." Vane smiled, slow and sharp. "Then prove it." He drew the blade. Its edge hissed with energy, casting blue fire across the ravine walls. The mercenaries held back. This was between the two of them now. Ryan tossed his rifle aside. The old coil was nearly drained, and he knew this fight wasn't about distance. It was about choice, about standing where no one else ever had. He pulled the combat knife from his belt, scarred steel, dull against the glow of Vane's blade. His stance was heavy, knee aching, shoulder stiff. Vane stood flawless, armored, eager. The clash was instant. Vane's blade carved arcs of blue light, each strike fast, lethal, practiced. Ryan parried with the knife, barely catching edges, sparks sprang against his arms. His muscles screamed, his bad leg buckled, but he pushed through, each block born of survival, not elegance. "You're outmatched," Vane sneered, driving him back step by step. "You can't protect her from me. You can't even protect yourself." Ryan's knife slipped, Vane's blade carving a line across his shoulder. Heat seared flesh. He staggered, teeth clenched, vision blurring. Serenia cried out, trying to rise, but her body failed her. He reached toward them, light flickering weakly in her veins. Rian forced himself upright. He remembered his brother's last breath in the mud of Halcyon. He remembered the silence of 3 winters spent alone, waiting for something worth lifting a weapon again. And now it stood behind him, trembling, silver-eyed, terrified. He steadied his breath. Vane lunged, blade aimed for his chest. Ryan didn't block. He stepped into the strike. His left hand seized Vane's wrist, dragging the blade off course as it seared past his ribs. With his right, he drove the knife upward, straight into the gap beneath Vane's armor. The bounty hunter's eyes widened. His mouth opened in shock, but no sound came. Ryan twisted the blade deep, then shoved him back. Vane staggered, gasped, then fell to the stone. His blade clattered against the rock, its glow sputtering out. Silence fell across the ravine. The mercenaries stood frozen, their leader lying broken before them. None stepped forward. None dared. Ryan dropped to one knee, breath ragged, blood seeping from his side. He turned towards Serenia, who stared at him with wide, trembling eyes. "You're safe," he rasped. Her body shook. "You killed for me." "No," Rian said, his voice rough but steady. "I killed to stop someone from taking you." Her hands covered her mouth, as if the weight of his words was too much. Tears shimmered in her silver eyes, though she didn't let them fall. Slowly, painfully, she crawled to him, her arms wrapping around his shoulders. "You chose me," she whispered. "Always." The mercenaries above retreated, engines whirring as they lifted back to their dropships. Without Vane, their contract was broken. No one paid for bodies without proof. The ships rose into the storm, their lights fading into the shattered sky. Only silence remained. Ryan sat in the dirt, bleeding, exhausted, Serenia clinging to him like the last breath of a dying world. His body shook, his vision dimmed, but his voice stayed clear when he leaned close to her ear. "You're not a weapon," he whispered. "Not to me, not ever." Her breath hitched, a sound half sob, half relief. She pressed her forehead against his, skin glowing faint in the dark. For the first time in her life, she felt claimed. Not owned, not chained, but chosen. And for the first time in his, Ryan Holt didn't feel like a soldier fighting someone else's war. He felt like a man who had drawn his line in blood and found something worth keeping beyond it. The storm above rumbled on, but inside the ravine, in the heat of 2 bodies pressed close, the war had shifted, not ended. Not yet, but shifted. Because against every chain, every order, every voice that called her property, one man had spoken louder. And she believed him. The world smelled of smoke and blood. Rian woke to the sting of cold air against his face, the storm clouds breaking in jagged streaks above the ravine. His body ached with every breath. His side burned where Vane's blade had carved through, bandaged now in strips of cloth. For a long moment, he thought he was still on Halcyon, another battlefield, another crater, another graveyard. Then he felt the weight against his chest. Serenia lay curled against him, her hair tangled across his collar. Silver eyes closed, her breathing soft and steady. Her skin glowed faint in the half-light, veins dim but alive. She had stayed pressed against him through the night, guarding him as much as he had guarded her. For the first time in years, he didn't wake alone. He moved carefully, afraid to stir her, but her eyes opened anyway, slow and clear, fixing on him. "You're alive," she whispered. "Barely," he muttered. Her lips trembled in something almost like a smile. She brushed her fingers gently over the rough bandage at his ribs, her touch soft, reverent. "You bleed because of me." "I bleed because I chose to," Rian said. His voice was rough, but there was no hesitation. She studied him for a long time, searching his face as though waiting for regret. None came. Instead, his eyes carried only certainty. For her, for the fight he had chosen. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't the silence of fear or suspicion. It was the silence of two people who no longer needed words to know what was already true. When the sun broke at last, pale gold bleeding over the horizon, the ravine no longer looked like a tomb. It looked like the bottom of something being reborn. They climbed slowly, Ryan bracing her, Serenia steadying him when his knee faltered. The climb hurt, but pain was proof they were still alive. At the ridgeline, they looked back once. The scorch marks, the broken bodies, the shattered rocks. War had come here and ended here. Above them, the sky stretched wide and empty, streaked with light. Ryan glanced at her. "Where do you want to go?" Her gaze lingered on the horizon. For the first time since he'd found her, her eyes weren't haunted by running. "Nowhere," she said softly. "I want to stay." "Here?" "Here," she repeated. "With you." Days passed. The cabin still stood, scarred but standing. Ryan repaired the walls where plasma fire had ripped through, each hammer strike echoing across the ridge. Serenia worked beside him, binding wood with scavenged steel, her hands strong despite the healing wound in her leg. They fell into rhythm. He split logs, she stacked them. He hauled water, she boiled it for stew. He cursed at broken tools, she laughed, quietly but real. At night they sat near the fire, sometimes in silence, sometimes in words. And sometimes, when the fire dimmed and shadows wrapped close, her hand found his. Fingers threading through calloused knuckles, holding as if letting go would break the fragile reality they had built. The bond wasn't sudden, it wasn't rushed. It was slow, deliberate, built from choice. Each touch, each glance, each word was a brick in something neither had believed possible again. One night as wind howled against the shutters, she spoke into the quiet. "My kind were never allowed to dream," she said. "We were told what we were, what we would be, weapons, property, never people, never anything more." Ryan turned toward her, firelight cutting lines across his scarred face. "You're not what they told you," he said. Her silver eyes met his. They shone like water. "What am I then?" He didn't hesitate. "Mine, if you want to be." Her breath caught, and for the first time tears spilled down her cheeks. She leaned forward, her forehead resting against his, her voice trembling. "I do." Spring came slow. Snow melted from the ridge, streams carving new veins through the earth. Pines unfurled green needles. Birds returned. Color seeped back into the valley. Ryan built another room onto the cabin, hands blistered again from work he hadn't done in years. Serenia planted seeds outside, kneeling in the dirt with quiet care. When he passed by with lumber, he would pause, watching her fingers press life into soil, her face softened in sunlight. She looked more human in those moments than she ever had, yet more alien too, as if the earth itself leaned toward her. Sometimes he caught himself staring, and she would catch him too. Silver eyes, flicking up, mouth curved faint in something almost like teasing. One morning she brought him a strip of cloth she had sewn from salvaged fabric. It wasn't much, a sash, rough and simple, but she tied it carefully around his arm, smoothing it with her fingers. "What's this?" he asked. "Something to remind you," she said. "Of what?" "That you chose me, and I chose you back." He covered her hand with his own, holding it there. "I don't need a reminder." "I do," she whispered. Not everything was safe. Shadows still moved on the horizon sometimes, ships passing high overhead. The corporations hadn't forgotten the Vayari. Ryan knew hunters would come again. But when they did, they would find more than a frightened girl and a broken soldier. They would find two people who had already chosen their line and would defend it with blood if they had to. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars rise, Serenia rested her head against his shoulder. Her hand slipped into his, warm, steady. "Do you ever wish you hadn't found me in that trap?" she asked. Ryan exhaled, the breath turning into something close to a laugh. "Every day I think about what would have happened if I'd walked away." "And?" And every day I know I'd be a dead man already if I had. Her lips curved faintly. You would have lived longer. Maybe, he said, but I wouldn't have lived at all. The silence after carried no weight, only peace. When dawn broke the next morning, it wasn't just another day. It was theirs. The world outside was still broken. Corporations still hunted, wars still simmered, and shadows still threatened. But here, on this ridge, two people who had been made to believe they were nothing more than tools or survivors had found something else. Ryan stood with his arm around her shoulders, watching the sun rise through fractured clouds. Serenia leaned into him, her silver eyes reflecting the light, as though she carried pieces of the dawn inside her. I was made to be owned, she whispered, but now I am just alive, with you. He pressed his forehead to hers, voice low, certain. You'll never be anything else. The sky burned gold above them, and for the first time since the war, since the traps, since the silence, there was no fear in either of their faces. Not survival, not escape, something better, love, and the kind of peace that stays,